Hello, I'm Kim. Welcome to my channel, Finding My Muse. In this series, Making Art with the Masters, the Mary Blair version, this is how I'm sharing my experience working with Mary Blair's techniques and style to try and improve my own art. In the first episode of this series, linked in the card above, I created a version of Mary Blair's concept art for Disney's It's a Small World using paper, scissors, glue, and paint pens. In today's video, I'm going to try to create another copy of Blair's It's a Small World concept painting, but this time with gouache. For this project, if you're going to join along, you'll need a few supplies. First, I'm using the Arches watercolor paper 300 GSM. It's hot press, so it's very smooth and great to work on. I also like to use some pencils for sketching, though Mary Blair I do not think sketched out these paintings. I'm going to do that. So I typically like to use a hard pencil. Also have a few erasers and a pencil sharpener. Hard edge, straight edge would help, particularly with this one, and I'll show you why in just a minute. And I'm also going to use some gouache. This is acrylic gouache. It's different from regular gouache in that it won't reactivate once it's dry. So that'll be something that I prefer to use. You'll also need a container of water and an assortment of brushes. I have two kinds. I have the Simply Simmons. They're pretty cheap. They're synthetic and they're flexible. They're great for gouache. And I also have some Da Vinci in rounds and flats. They're student grade as well. They're also flexible and synthetic, and they work really well with gouache. They tend to hold the paint quite a bit. You'll also want some masking tape and a paint palette. I have a set of acrylic gouache that I'm going to use. It's pretty basic. It's just the warm and cold basic colors with some greens and a burnt sienna, a black and a white. I probably won't use the black because I prefer to use something a little more rich. A Payne's Gray is one of my favorite go-tos. So let's get started. The thing about this painting, when I first started looking at it, I noticed that there were columns and rows. So I essentially wanted to set up a grid on my paper. I counted out the rows and the columns. It looked like there were 23 rows and 23 columns and 14 rows. So I got started setting up my grid. I just measured it out and drew some light lines across. Once I had my grid created, then I could easily just start at the bottom left corner of the drawing and begin adding all of those shapes that Mary Blair had in her original concept painting. In some cases I used a straight edge, but often I just drew them in. I wasn't trying to make a perfect copy. What I was really trying to understand is her techniques and her style, how she was able to create these pieces. Throughout this video, I'm going to speed up these clips. It took me about 6 hours over the course of a week to create this painting, and I don't want you to have to watch this video for 6 hours. So you may even want to fast forward. Couple of lessons I learned recreating this piece. Number one, having the gouache the right consistency is crucial. You don't want to have too much water, but you don't want it to be too thick either. So finding that balance is something that may take a little bit of time. It did for me. But also having the right brush. Now, a lot of people like to use a small flat brush for this type of painting, but for me it just didn't work. It was too bulky. I needed the fine point of a round brush, and I figured that out after the first, I guess, quarter of the painting. The turning point for me was ditching the little flat brush and picking up the round brush to use. I finally felt like I had more control and I was able to relax into the painting. It also honestly helped me with the consistency of the gouache. I could get quite a bit of paint on my brush and it flowed a bit because I had a little water with it. So it really made all the difference. I was finally able to relax and enjoy painting. One other challenge for me with this painting is how small I made it. I didn't really realize while I was drawing it out how tiny it was going to be. So it did prove to be a challenge to record because I needed to often bend over to see and get the light just right so that I could see it, but also record at the same time. So yeah. Sorry about my head getting in the way. And now the darks. So I mixed up equal red, blue, and yellow to make a dark color. It was a little brown for me, so I went ahead and added a little more blue. Got a nice dark color and started filling it in. I guess the other challenge I had was matching the colors. So clearly I took a few liberties, but I think the spirit is there. As it turns out, the key for me with this painting was taking my time, taking each little square one at a time. It could have been really easy for me to feel overwhelmed with trying to create this intricate little gouache illustration, but I used the materials I had and I did the best I could. Sometimes the colors didn't quite match up. Sometimes those lines weren't as sharp and straight as they could be, but I have to say I really enjoyed this and I'm quite pleased with the results. I'm probably going to give this painting to my nieces and I think it'll look great framed. Finishing touches. Ooh, the best part. Listen, I'm no great master artist. This series is all about my experience and trying to improve my art by copying a master artist. If I can do it, anyone can. You know, give it a shot. I hope you'll join me on this journey, and I hope you'll join me in my next video. I'll see you next week. Bye.